The warm sun was on my skin as I stepped onto the cobblestone streets, my hand wrapped tightly in atoms. This was the escape I'd been dreaming of for months, a chance for us to find each other again. Everything felt like a scene from a fairy tale. The sweet scent of jasmine in the air, the clink of our glasses as we toasted under the stars. I let myself sink into the magic, hoping this trip would stitch us back together. But as I watched him across the table, I saw the flicker in his eyes every time his phone buzzed. At first, I told myself it was just work. He'd always been dedicated, always had 100 things on his mind. Yet there was a new distance in his voice, a quiet that felt heavier than any late-night silence we'd shared before. It was like he was talking to someone else, even when he was looking at me. Still, I tried to hold on. I thought if I just believed hard enough, if I kept capturing every stolen kiss and every late-night promise, maybe I could bring us back. But in the quiet moments, when he looked away, I could almost feel it. The truth waiting for me, just out of reach. Each morning, I woke up next to him, trying to believe that the warmth of his body against mine was enough. We wandered through the city's winding streets, sharing pastries and laughter that felt genuine in the moment. He would brush his lips against my temple, and for a fleeting second, I'd convince myself that this was real, that we were still us. I took photos of us together, hoping to capture not just the sights, but the feeling that maybe we were still in love. But there were moments when his smile didn't reach his eyes, when he turned away too quickly or lingered too long on his phone screen. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just scared because I wanted so much for this trip to fix what we'd lost. I thought if I just kept smiling, kept pretending, it would be okay, and so I kept playing my part. I laughed when he teased me. I let him take my hand in the crowded markets, and I kissed him under foreign skies. But inside, a small voice kept whispering that something wasn't right. I tried to hush it, to focus on the glow of lanterns and the rhythm of music in the air, but that voice was growing louder, and I couldn't ignore it forever. As the days passed, that small voice turned into a steady drumbeat in my chest. I noticed how he'd slip away for hushed phone calls that ended too abruptly, how he'd come back with a forced smile and a practiced excuse. In the quiet of our hotel room, I'd watch him scroll through his phone with a look that never included me. It was like a window had opened, and I could see the truth swirling in the air between us, even if he wouldn't admit it. I wanted to scream, to grab his face and demand he tell me who was on the other end of those calls, but I didn't. I was too scared of what I might hear, too scared to shatter the fragile hope I was still clinging to. So instead, I let the doubt coil around my heart, wrapping tighter with every passing day. I kept telling myself it was just work stress, that he'd tell me everything when he was ready. I wanted so badly to believe it, but in my gut, I knew. Work was exactly what he was hiding, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could pretend I didn't feel it. It was late one night when the truth finally cracked open. We were back at the hotel, the city lights glowing outside the window, and I thought he was asleep beside me. But his phone buzzed again, a message lighting up the screen in the dark. I reached for it, half terrified of what I might find. My hands shook as I read the words, "I miss you. Come back to me when she's gone." My breath caught in my throat. Clara, his business partner, the woman he always called family, the one he said I had nothing to worry about. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. My heart cracked open, raw and shaking. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't understand how the man I loved could look me in the eyes and still lie so perfectly. I wanted to wake him up and demand answers. I wanted to shout, to sob, to throw every memory of us out the window. But instead, I sat there in the dark, my mind spinning like a carousel of betrayal. I'd been so sure that this trip was our chance to find each other again, and now all I could see was how blind I'd been. I pressed the phone to my chest, feeling the sting of every word. I miss you. Those 3 words felt like knives in my skin, cutting away everything I thought we had. I kept reading it over and over, like if I stared long enough, the message would disappear, and this nightmare would end. But it didn't. The more I read it, the more real it became, and the more I realized how deep the betrayal went. I thought back to every moment that felt off on this trip, every forced smile, every sudden phone call, every late night he spent working. I could see it all now, laid out in sharp relief. He hadn't just been distracted. He'd been building a secret life right in front of me, and I'd been too in love, too hopeful to see it. A wave of cold washed over me. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stop the shaking. My mind raced with questions, but there was no answer that would make this hurt less. I didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew was that in that moment, paradise had turned into a prison, and I had to find a way to break free. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling while Adam slept soundly beside me. My heart was pounding so loudly, I wondered how he couldn't hear it. Every breath felt like it scraped against the raw edges of my chest. I wanted to wake him up, to make him look me in the eye and admit what he'd done. But I also knew that once the truth was out, there would be no going back. So I stayed silent, biting down on every question, every scream that wanted to claw its way out of my throat. My tears fell hot and fast, soaking the pillow, but he didn't stir. He didn't know that his secret was no longer hidden, that the woman lying next to him was no longer the same. I felt the shift in my bones, the cold, hard clarity that comes when the last piece of a lie snaps into place. And in that moment, I made a quiet promise to myself. I wouldn't let this destroy me. I wouldn't let him have that kind of power. In the morning, I'd still smile, still play along. But inside, I was already planning how I'd leave, and this time it would be on my terms. The flight home was a silent performance. Adam leaned back in his seat, a faint smile on his lips as he watched the clouds roll by. I sat beside him, staring out the window, my face calm and composed. Every time he tried to catch my eye, I gave him the softest smile I could muster. I was done fighting for answers. I knew the truth, and that was enough. Inside, though, a storm was brewing. My chest was tight, but my mind had never been clearer. I was done begging for scraps of love, done pretending that this trip was anything but a stage. As the plane soared above the ocean, I felt like I was flying away from the last of my illusions. I was done being the woman who waited for him to choose her. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. But I didn't hold on. I felt the weight of every lie he'd told me, every moment he'd stolen. I knew I couldn't keep pretending, not for much longer. So I sat there, my hand in his, my heart already somewhere else, and I planned how I would leave him behind. I watched the way he leaned into me, as if nothing had changed. His lips brushed my cheek, and I forced myself not to flinch. I didn't want him to see how disgusted I was, how every touch felt like a betrayal of my own body. I'd spent years giving him every part of me, and now I couldn't stand the feel of his skin on mine. I knew I had to keep up the charade just a little longer. When he laughed at some movie playing on the tiny screen in front of us, I let out a quiet chuckle too. My voice was soft, almost sweet, and he seemed content with it. I played the part of the perfect partner because it gave me time. Time to think, to plan, to hold on to the final shred of control I still had. I knew I couldn't let him see the fury burning behind my eyes. As the plane began its descent, my heart was steady, no longer rattled by fear. I was done being the woman he could take for granted. When the wheels touched down, I felt it deep in my bones. I wasn't going to be the same woman who boarded this plane. And that thought gave me the strength to smile at him one last time. As we stepped off the plane, I felt the weight of our shared memories pressing against my shoulders. But I kept my head high, my face soft and open, as if I hadn't just watched the man I loved become a stranger. He reached for me in the busy terminal, his touch light and familiar, and I let him. But inside, I was already gone. The ride home was quiet, the car filled with the hum of the engine and the silent promises I made to myself. I watched the city lights blur past, each one a tiny reminder of the life I was ready to reclaim. Adam tried to make small talk, but I let his words wash over me. I had nothing left to say, nothing left to give. When he leaned in for a kiss at the door, I turned my head away, letting his lips land on my cheek instead. It was a small act, but it felt like the first step in taking back my power. In that moment, I knew exactly how I was going to leave, and this time, it would be on my terms. The next morning, I woke up to the faint scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen, but it didn't warm me the way it used to. I sat up in bed, my eyes tracing the familiar lines of our bedroom, and realized how little of this space felt like mine anymore. Adam was still playing the devoted partner, still making plans for another trip, as if nothing had changed. But I knew better now, and I was done playing along. While he was out taking a call, probably to her, I went to his computer and checked the travel plans he'd booked for us. I saw the next trip he'd planned, all the details carefully laid out. My fingers hovered over the tickets, and a smile flickered on my lips. He thought he was still in control, still pulling the strings. But I was done letting him script my story. I quietly sold those tickets, feeling the rush of power in every click. With that money, I booked my own trip, one I'd never have dared to take before, a trip just for me. I didn't tell him. I didn't even leave a note, because this was my moment to reclaim everything he'd tried to take from me. I spent those last few days at home, moving through the motions like a ghost. Adam didn't notice. He was too busy, too sure of himself. Every morning, he'd kiss my forehead and leave for work, and every morning, I'd smile sweetly, already packing my heart for the journey ahead. I knew he thought he'd gotten away with it. He had no idea that the woman he thought he was keeping in her place was already gone. I'd never felt so alive, so clear-headed. Each day, I planned my trip, researching places I'd only dreamed of, picturing the winding streets and bustling markets. The thought of it filled me with a quiet thrill. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to choose me. I was choosing myself. My heart still ached, but it was no longer for him. It was for the woman I'd lost somewhere along the way, and who I was finally ready to find again. When I booked the last detail of my trip, I felt a surge of electricity in my veins. I was done living in the shadows of someone else's secrets. And as I sealed the envelope with the tickets I'd sold, I realized I didn't need to shout, didn't need to make a scene. My silence was the sweetest revenge of all. On the morning of my flight, I left a single note on the kitchen table. Just a few simple words, scrawled in my own handwriting. You can have your business, partner. I'll have the world. It was all he deserved to know. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. Didn't need to beg for answers he never planned to give. My heart was lighter than it had been in years. As I walked out the door, the air felt crisper, every breath filling me with a sense of freedom I'd almost forgotten how to feel. The world outside was waiting for me, bright and full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small or powerless. I felt unstoppable. I didn't look back when I closed the door behind me. I didn't need to. That chapter of my life was over. And as the taxi pulled away from the curb, I felt the faintest smile tug at my lips. Because this time, I wasn't running away from something. I was running towards something that was finally mine. The plane touched down in a city I'd only ever seen in pictures. Winding alleys, bright colors, the scent of sea air drifting in through the taxi window. My heart fluttered as I stepped out, the weight of everything I'd left behind slipping away with each breath. I was alone, but for the first time, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I wandered through the streets, soaking in every detail like a sponge. The chatter of locals, the warmth of the sun on my face, the taste of a pastry I bought from a small cafe. Each moment was a gift I'd given myself, a quiet promise that I wouldn't let anyone take my joy again. The city felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, and I was ready to meet it head-on. I thought about Adam sometimes, how he'd traded me for something that looked like excitement but was really just another lie. But those thoughts didn't sting like they used to. I'd left him behind, and with every step I took, I was building a new life that was entirely mine. Each day felt like a small victory, ordering coffee in a language I didn't quite know, navigating twisting alleyways with nothing but my instinct. I'd wake up to the sound of the sea, the breeze carrying whispers of possibility. I'd always thought I needed someone by my side to feel complete. Now, I was learning how to be whole on my own. I spent my mornings at little cafes, journaling my thoughts and dreams, savoring every sip of bitter coffee like it was a toast to my freedom. In the afternoons, I wandered markets filled with scents of spices and fresh flowers, letting curiosity pull me forward. There was a power in that, in moving through the world on my own terms. It was a power I hadn't known I'd been missing. At night, I'd sit at the edge of the water, the lights of the city dancing on the waves. I'd think about how far I'd come, how the life I'd left behind felt like another lifetime. And I'd smile, because I knew this was just the beginning. On my last night in the city, I found a quiet cafe that overlooked the water, its soft lights glowing like fireflies in the dark. I ordered a glass of wine and let the soft music wrap around me like a warm hug. The air smelled of salt and possibility, and I felt something settle in my chest, a calm I hadn't known in years. I lifted my glass, toasting to the woman I'd become, to the strength I'd found in the wreckage he left behind. I wasn't just healing. I was alive in a way I'd never been before. The laughter of strangers and the gentle lap of the waves were all the company I needed. As I watched the lights of the city shimmer across the water, I knew one thing for certain. He traded me for a fling. I traded him for the world, and I would never, ever look back.